Hello and welcome to another episode of Unique Professions. Today I have Jacinta Patterson, who is Director of Membership and Maturity at Providence Church in Bayswater. Jacinta, can you actually tell me what actually is the Director of Membership and Maturity?
Hi, David. That's a very good question. So I work in a church. The church is called Providence Bayswater. So it's just a little church that meets in the bowling club at Baysy, actually. Yep, and so pretty great. And yeah, Director of Maturity, it makes me sound like I'm a really mature person, which I wouldn't say necessarily describes me. But yeah, so it means I care. So just like you have portfolios in a business where people look after various portfolios, my job is to look after the kind of portfolios of membership. So people becoming members of our church and being involved, as well as maturity, which means basically that they grow in their faith as Christians. And so I try to help them do that, the whole church, in various ways.
Now, how did you actually start this role? Because when I read about it, I was like, I've never heard of that before. It's quite an interesting one. And I was like, oh, I have to have you on the show.
There you go. Wow, I'm glad it piqued your interest. Yeah, so it's a good question. Well, it's kind of a longish story, but maybe I'll start with the most recent part, and you can see where you want to go from there. But yeah, I did a church planting residency. So this is I've been studying at a Bible college, a theological college for the past 3 years, and in my third year, I looked at a job with a church that they were advertising. This basically you work 1 day a week in a church and just see what it's like and whether that's something you'd want to do. And yeah, talk to the pastor there, get some training, and yeah. Anyway, and I wasn't planning to work there long term, but I just thought I'd stay for a year and see what it was like, because I thought, like you, the pastor had a social work background, and so just good with people, and I was really impressed by that, and thought he'd be great to learn from. So yeah, he was advertising a job, and I thought I'd apply for it. And kind of what he was advertising didn't really suit me as a person a bit, so he kind of changed the job a bit to suit me. So that's how I ended up with this random job title. Yeah, in some ways it's I'm basically like a pastor, but it's just a bit of a more, because if you call someone a pastor, it's like, what does that really mean? So this is a bit more specific because of covers the portfolios I look at. Yeah.
And you talk about
Church planting?
church planting.
Yeah. Good question. Yeah. Well, I guess every church started out as a church plant. So where maybe a bigger, well-established church will plant another one in another suburb to reach and meet the needs of the people in that suburb. And so I guess in the past, 2-3 years, I think there's something like 300,000 people have moved to Australia. And let's say 1% of those are evangelical Christians, then that means we need, I think the maths was like another 200-ish churches if they didn't all go to pre-existing churches. So church planting is trying to plant more churches to reach various people in those communities. Yeah.
Now, you said they're evangelical Christian.
Yeah.
That's obviously a domination of church. You've got Christianity, you've got Catholicism.
Yeah.
What attracted you to this type of belief?
Yeah.
More so than the others.
Sure. Great question, David. Yeah. So, well, what I find compelling about, lots to say, but what I find compelling is I reckon most religions have an approach to God of trying to approach him on your own terms, trying to be good enough for him, trying to be a moral person, or, do your best and God will accept you. What I think the Bible says is actually you'll never be good enough on your own. It paints a pretty bleak picture of humanity, but also a wonderful picture in that humans are made precious to God and loved by him, but fallen creatures who are broken and choose other things over God. And so, yes, God has made a way to reconcile himself to us, and and that's through Jesus, who has died in my place, so I get to go free. And I think so that's what I understand the Bible to be about. And in that, I think evangelical Christianity, or as opposed to, the main distinction is like Protestant to Catholicism to Orthodox are the three main branches. And my church is in the Protestant tradition. And I think the main thing for me is everything else says do. You need to do to be right with God. But I think the Bible teaches Jesus has done it. It's not do, it's done. And it's trusting in him that you are right with God. Yeah.
Now, I just want to pick your brains about the Bible.
The
Bible
here.
Go for it. This is a bit of a theological question. And I am kind of sidetracking just a little bit.
That's fine.
A lot of people, who believe in the Bible, take the book as a whole. But as you know, there are some bits of the Bible that are a bit, quite confronting.
Absolutely.
So, as a believer, do you think it's okay to just pick apart take some of the bits that you like from the Bible, and maybe not some of the stuff that's a little bit, controversial or, by today's standards, a bit barbaric or a bit violent? Because some people believe that you have to just believe the Bible as the whole, and you can't just pick and choose the good bits. What do you think?
Great question, David. Yeah, look, I can see why we want to pick and choose the good bits. Like, there are some beautiful bits, like the passage about love. Love is kind, love is patient, love does no evil. Like, it's brilliant, isn't it? There's some real highlights. And then there's some real hard bits. Like, I wrote a Bible study in the past few weeks, and it was about conquest in the Holy Land for Israel in the book of Deuteronomy, wiping out a nation. It's so intense. And I think part of me definitely wants to pick and choose parts, and I totally resonate with people who do that. But I think the problem with that is it's whose God is it? Who is God if I pick and choose what I like and don't like? In that case, I'm God, right? I get to choose what's right and wrong rather than consider something else who makes claims on my life. And I think by holding that, what the Bible says about itself is that it's all God's word. And I know it's a circular argument. We can go there if you want. But if it is, then I need to do my best to read and understand it all, how it was just like with all texts, you need to try and understand what it meant in the context it was written. The thing that I think about the Bible is we talk about it, it's a progressive revelation where God reveals himself over time in different ways, but most ultimately he's revealed himself in Jesus, the God-man. So yes, I think I do need to hold the whole Bible together, as much as that is difficult.
When you were studying at Bible college, when did you think this is the moment that I really want to be part of, that I want to be a person of God and to teach?
Yeah, I reckon it happened before I was at Bible college. I mean, going to Bible college is pretty committed.
Yeah.
It was actually, the story was I was just turned 18 and was just starting out at university. And I'd grown up in the country on a farm, and my family were fairly loosely committed members of the Baptist church in our hometown. And so I'd kind of, sort of been involved in Christian stuff, but I never got it. I didn't get why we were involved. I didn't get what it was about. It never clicked until I went on this camp in Albany and heard that Jesus had died for me and had risen from the dead. And I thought, struth, I don't know anyone else who's risen from the dead. Like, that's outrageous. If that's true and it's like historical fact, which I think there's a pretty sweet evidence for that. No one could find his body, and people who were one day scared to leave their house, i.e. the apostles, were next day willing to die for this message. And I'm like, wow, if that changed their life and has changed the course of history, then maybe there's something to this. And so that weekend, it's kind of like the song Amazing Grace, where the writer of that, John Newton, was a slave trader who became a Christian and stopped. And he said, was blind, but now I see. It's kind of the best way to explain what it was like for me. I didn't understand what God had done for me in Jesus, and then one day it clicked, and I was like, whoa, that's huge. So I was like sitting up the back with my cool cousins, like they're like, do you want to become a Christian? And I'm like, oh, this is social suicide. But I think I'm onto something here. And so I was like, okay. So that was 18. And then from there, I started reading the Bible a bit and plugging in with like a group of Christians on my university campus and, trying to read the Bible properly and learning how to, because it's kind of, it's 66 books in one, so having a bit of a index page kind of thing is quite helpful. And so, so that set me on a trajectory of being an enthusiastic Christian who liked talking about Jesus and considering what I do the rest of my life. And I guess one camp, a speaker talked about he thinks 50% of the people in the room should consider whether they would do full-time vocational ministry. And he was like, turn to the person next to you and decide between you and them. And I like looked at them. I don't remember who they were. And I was kind of like, I could do it. I love it. And so, so kind of since then, I've been on the trajectory towards kind of working in Christian ministry. And so that's been 12 years now. Yeah.
Now, I'm just going back to the church that you are in at the moment, Providence. Mm-hmm. Do you find that in that it's a community?
Great question. Yeah, it is actually. I love it. Yes. So, it's a local church. So it's in Bayswater. So it's like a lot of people are from that area. Like three families live on the same street as the bowling club, which is pretty fabulous. I don't live in that area because I, haven't moved there. I've only started working there in the past 6 months, for like full time. So we'll see. Maybe I will soon, ideally. But this rental market's pretty wild. But yeah, I think it is, which is really fabulous, David, in the sense that we're so different. Like, there's so many different people and we don't have much in common other than Jesus. Like, I'm from a farm and so I'm pretty, get stuff done, probably more down the, more conservative side of politics. And then Bayswater's quite a, more down the left side of politics. And, I go to church with people who hold very different political views to me. I go to church with apparently 7 people who have PhDs. And on Sunday I was, setting up with a mechanic. Like, it's amazing having just so much variety. Like, there's a first language Chinese guy in my Bible study. So we, try to accommodate his language, trying to, explain big words in another language. And so, I do think it's a community of people, lots of different types of people. We've got 80-year-olds and about, 55 children, which is wild for 110-ish adults. But the community is great. We often have meal rosters and we have group chats for everything between fishing club and ladies book club, whatever you want. There's a Basie chat for it. It's a delight having a great network of people who you can rely on I remember someone even was just like, can someone come jumpstart me? I'm in I'm in Morley and stuck. And yeah, so it is great to have a community of people around you who you can disagree with
Yep.
and still choose to love. So it's great.
Can I ask roughly how many people are in your congregation?
Yeah. So we have one congregation at Basie. It's a 10 a.m. service.
Yep.
And there's about 55 children and 110 adults is where we're at.
So around about 165 roughly.
Yeah, so there's a lot of kids. So we have it's a pretty rowdy service. Like we don't have so many older people because the kids are pretty wild, but we've got at least 5 people who are retired now, which has been lovely, and so a nice change. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when I say community, to me that's still quite a large number.
Yes.
And where I've been to churches where there's maybe about 20 or 30 people in that congregation, and they still call themselves a community as well, and they know everyone and all that kind of thing. So I was just the reason why I went with that question is because sometimes the bigger you are, you do lose that community.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It is a thing. There's a social researcher, last name Dunbar, and he's got a model, the Dunbar's curve, and at various different points, so like 120 people start to feel, or I think it's 80 people start to feel like they don't know everyone anymore. And so, we try to factor that in. And so we have things like small groups. So each week there's people meet like on a weeknight and for a Bible study and chat and pray for one another. And there'd probably be about 10 people in those groups. You've got kind of smaller communities there, and then also people serve together. So we'll have the kids church team or the venue setup team, and so you get to know a few people by working together and meeting together, not just at church. So you're right. It definitely helps in bigger churches. Yeah.
Now this question might be a little bit controversial,
sure,
but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Yeah, I like that.
Sometimes some people may think that if you're planting churches, it's more to do with maybe perhaps, some people think that church, you shouldn't be not forced to go to church, or it's more of a thing where, if there is a church already in the community, that person should be able to just find it themselves and go into a church and say, hey, look, I've seen this church, I want to be part of your community, rather than perhaps being, almost like driven to it.
Yeah, okay.
So what do you think of that?
Yeah, great.
Because some people, there's some things like Hillsong and those sorts, they have been accused of perhaps, trying to market themselves as a church, where some people may find that marketing goes against, finding, God and finding churches. In general.
Okay. So people want to be free to do what they want. They don't want us to push them. Them that way. Great question, David. Yeah, absolutely. And I think they're right. People are definitely free to not come to church. I would still think they're missing out. I think it's a great place to be. But I reckon we want to hold out the invite to everyone. Anyone and everyone's welcome. Come as you are. And you're welcome to come too, David.
Yep.
So we will invite people unashamedly, and obviously you get to say no, and that's totally okay. And people come on their own accord. Like just on Sunday, I met a new family and a new girl who moved to the street recently who heard about it, I think, via social media, and just come along. So I guess, I think what we believe is good news, and I reckon our world can often be short of good news. And so if I've got good news, I'm C.S. Lewis, the good old author of Narnia. He describes himself as the most reluctant convert to Christianity, and he said, he's always good on the illustrations, but he described it as like, we're just beggars who have found bread, who want to give bread to others. And so I think it can be hard. Even I caught up with one of my cousins who's not a Christian, and he got handed a corny Christian flyer a few weekends ago in Freo, and he's kind of cringing, and I'm cringing too because it is corny. But I know the heart of the people who are doing it is good. But yeah, I think Christians haven't always done a good job of it. And yeah, I am sorry that that's the case. And I know I haven't as well. So, yeah.
Okay. Now, when in your current role, you say you've got church on Sundays, which is the traditional time spot. What is your role during the service?
Yeah, good question. Oh, I wear different hats on different Sundays. So last weekend, my welcoming team were on. So we set up, it's a bowling club, which doesn't look that much like a church. So we need to set up the chairs and create some space, set up Basie's, a bit of a coffee snob kind of suburb. So we've got single origin filter coffee, and that takes a while to make. So all the snacks, so just making it clear and accessible for people where the kids program meets and all those things. So that's kind of one thing. Sometimes I lead the service, so I welcome everyone and run through kind of I guess it's a bit like an MC role. And then this Sunday, I'm going to watch the kids program. So see what they get up to, because I kind of look after them, but haven't been yet in my role to see what their program looks like. So various things, but often I guess one of my most favourite things is chatting to new people. Always excited to meet someone new and get to know them and check out what's brought them to Basie and how they found it. I guess I'll be chatting to someone somewhere, or some days I'm cleaning up the storeroom. Someone spilt all the forks 2 weeks ago, so I just clean that up. So there's always something random going on, David. Yeah.
And now not recently, but a while back we still have it. It's COVID-19, of course.
Yeah.
How did your, obviously when we were in lockdown, we couldn't go to church, couldn't have very minimalistic services. How did that go for you?
Yeah, good question. Wow, it feels like
a while ago.
A while. Yeah. Well, what was I doing at the time? I was working with the Christian Union at university, kind of like an apprenticeship, just learning how to do ministry really, and so a lot of Zoom, which we can all attest to that being tedious. Yes, how much better is face to face? Sorry that this is just audio, but so a lot of that, and I think we watched church online. I think that made it hard for the staff. I didn't work at a church back then, but hard for the staff who might not be tech savvy to have to learn how to do online. But it was still great. We'd often meet in our small groups, but just over Zoom and stuff. So it wasn't ideal. The Bible does talk about don't forget the habit of meeting together to encourage one another. And so definitely harder, but thankful that we have technology, so we weren't all isolated. So yeah.
Now back to your role as a membership. The Director of Membership and Maturity. You said earlier that before you started, there were some things in the role initially that you kind of changed or kind of tweaked a little bit.
Yeah.
What were the things that you weren't absolutely 100% with, and why, and what did you change?
Oh, David, testing my memory. Yeah, well, I reckon it's a good question. I can't remember exactly what the job description said. There was something about it that I was like, oh, that doesn't really suit me as a person. It might have been, so there's another M for magnification, which is about loving God, which I'm on board with, but often it's also about the music and running that side of the service, which, my housemates are always telling me that here's the tune and here's me way over here. So, definitely not my role. Also, I think a lot of people who do a job similar to me in churches might have a job title like a women's minister.
Yep.
But I think the job advertised was associate pastor, and a bit of an annoying kind of tangent, but my boss just isn't quite sure of that role, that job description for a female in the role, just because of the way the Bible speaks about men and women working together and stuff. Long and complicated. He's not totally sold on it. He's going to do a bit more thinking about it soon and see whether he's happy to call me like an associate pastor or whatever. But basically the annoying job title is he's just not quite sure what to call me. So I think the job title that they were advertising was associate pastor, which in our circles, which is kind of complementarian, where we think men and women are made equal but different and have different roles in church and in family. That means that there are some things in church that I might not do that a man might do. And so that just but he wanted to employ me and made the job kind of suit what I wanted to do and what he wanted me to do. So that's how that came about.
Yeah, I was going to, as soon as you said this.
I knew it.
As soon as you said this, I was like, my brain just went,
that's right.
Okay, here we go. I think you know where I'm about to go here.
Sure.
Men and women in church.
Yeah.
We live in a pretty progressive society where, in most jobs, like out in the field, like teachers, social workers, all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Men and women work together harmlessly, no worries, there's no politics, it is what it is.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, most of the time.
Yeah, totally.
But, why is there that kind of, I suppose, stigma or backlash in the church? Why can't you be an associate professor? Why not?
Yeah, no, great question, David.
Yeah. You knew I was going to go there.
100%, yeah, I know. It's kind of the annoying part that you get stuck down, but talking about my job title, but I'm okay with it. So, yeah, I think in the Christian faith, like in, I guess, like Protestantism, there's various views about men and women and how they relate. Some I would say are wrong, some are awful, but there's a kind of a spectrum within kind of evangelical Protestant churches that's got like egalitarian up one end, which is men and women are equal and do totally the same things, and then complementarian up the other end of the spectrum, where men and women are equal but do slightly different things, or different things. I don't. Maybe it's not that slight. And and so this isn't in every category of life, but the Bible. So I think this. This view comes about because the Bible does speak about men and women and their role in the church and in the family differently. And there are a few passages I could point you to. But basically, at least in the church, I think, like God He's made the world ordered, and there's order in kind of creation as well as in relationships. And I think this order's good because it reflects who God is. And it's like I've had to go back to Bible college and remember an answer here. But I'm thinking on the spot. So that means that the Bible speaks about these things. And so just like I said earlier, you can't just throw out the bits you don't like. You have to try and wrestle with it and go, is this just a cultural thing of the time? Is there a principle that underlies the cultural outworking of what the Apostle Paul was saying to this particular church that still applies because it's still true of God and how he wants us to live today? And so I think the Bible does have some things to say that are cannot just be relegated to the culture of the time, but actually transcend culture. And one of that is the differences between men and women and how he's made us equal in humanity and equal in his sight. But there are some differences, basically some basic biological ones and some other ones. And so I think that that plays out in the church in that God doesn't want, He wants men to step up and bear the responsibility, and for women to come alongside and to support and help help the church to flourish. And I think you can hear that and go, oh, so women are just the help. And actually, the Bible itself refers to God as people's helper. And so actually the role of helper is not insignificant. It's actually huge. You know, I know what it's like to need help with something, and you're just so grateful for the person who comes along and helps. So, so I think the Bible paints a very clear picture that men and women are equal, but God's given us some different things to do. And I reckon when that works well, it's fantastic. And I reckon my boss and I are having lots of joy working together, and it's going well. So that was a pretty terrible answer, but you can work with what you've got there, David.
It sounds good to me. Now, I know, as we've mentioned before, the Bible is a text that was written years and years ago.
Yeah.
And as a society, I'll go even maybe a little bit less broader, as an Australian culture, we have evolved, and we have done some wonderful things.
For sure.
Well, we've probably done some not so great things, but, it is what it is. But how do you process that you believe, in a text that's been written so long ago, and that can't be changed, but as a society, some of the things in this Bible here don't reflect what's happening in today's society as a cultural change or a cultural shift. And even, I can give you an example. A few years ago, we had the vote on same-sex marriage. And, if we had a chance to vote, Australia voted yes. Some people, no voters, didn't believe, and that's fine. But as a society, we have progressed in different things, and that may not reflect the values and attitudes of the Bible.
Yeah, great question. Do you want me to specifically address same-sex marriage or just cultural things in general?
You can do a bit of both.
Yeah. All right, I'll try to hold it all together. So where I thought of something, forgot. What I said earlier of holding the whole Bible together is important in this, and about it transcending culture as well. So I think, isn't it amazing? To steal a phrase from someone else, the West where we live is built on the Christian faith, and it's pretty hard to deny that historically. I think Tom Holland, the historian, wrote Dominion and a few other books like that, where he's wrestled with the fact that what we love, the freedom and the rights and the value we give to humanity is based on Jesus and what he says about people and the Bible. And so I think what's happened is people still like what Jesus says, and fair enough. I think what he says is, the best I've ever heard. And but I reckon Christianity can look prickly on the outside, but at the heart, it's actually beautiful. And so humans are fully known and fully loved by God, and it's the best. It's, I think, what we're made for, to know God and love Him. But anyway, sidetrack. And so, back to the question. What that looks like in our culture. I think the Christian faith's always transcended culture. So when Jesus came into the world, he was in the Roman Empire, where it was normal for powerful males to sleep with young boys, to rape them, essentially. And that was an acceptable part of Roman culture, along with many other things we would find disturbing today. And Jesus turned that culture on his head. Men were faithful to their wives. Christianity changed the social fabric, and in a good way, in lots of good ways. It wasn't always good, but in many ways that were beneficial for society. And so I think today what we've done is we've kind of pulled the rug out from the carpet, I think is the right phrase, where where we still want what's on the rug, but we've taken the foundations away. And yeah, I think plenty of cultural commentators will wonder whether that's going to work in our culture, whether we'll still be able to have the kind of freedom and the democratic views we have without the basis, or whether it'll turn into a bit more hostility without the kind of the same foundations. So I think that's problematic, but I guess I'm not worried about it. I think God runs the world and he does what he wants, and he's above cultures and rules overall. So totally trust him with what's going on in the world. And while Christianity might be on the what's the word? Like outer / hated, some range there. In Iran and in places like Africa and China, the rate of Christians is going through the roof. I think Iran is the fastest growing Christian country in the world, ironically. And so, yeah, like while the West rejects God and turns away from its roots, I think God works in other nations who are reaching out to him. So that's kind of one part of the question. As for, being kind of, you might say, on the wrong side of history or things like that, yeah, they're real struggles, David. So I reckon I'm a constant doubter of the Christian faith. I reckon pretty much every day I re-question my brain, is all this true? Or have I got the wrong thing? Like, am I wrong? Is Jesus really the king of this world? Or am I barking up the wrong tree? I think that's the right phrase. And so, but I think about it and think about what I've got in Jesus and what kind of the world offers. And Jesus says, Peter says to Jesus, who else will we turn to? No one else has the words of eternal life. And I think we all have this inbuilt bias this inbuilt desire and idea that life is good and should be forever and perfect, but we're all struck by the reality of evil and brokenness in the world. And so I think Jesus says there's eternal life, and he makes sense of life like no one else I've found. And so I find him compelling still, even though I'm on the wrong side of history. I'm a minority. I think he's still onto something, and unless someone gives me a better alternative, I'm going to stick with him for another day or two, I reckon. As for plebiscite and various cultural issues that Christians are definitely on the outer for, absolutely, it's tricky. And do we like it? No. Do we think? Sorry, that wasn't very clear. Do I struggle to, I think, probably, I think people misunderstand what we're saying a lot. But as well as, Christians cannot be very loving in how they communicate as well. So, for instance, with the plebiscite, voting on whether we'd allow same-sex marriage, I think, God loves all people. We've all done wrong in various ways. I have, and we're all kind of messed up. I'm messed up. Every human's a bit messed up, and that means we don't live the way God wants us to do and enjoy the flourishing that he's built into good order. So I think that we all have a problem. I'm not saying they have a particular problem, and I'm speaking about dear friends and relatives here. And what I'm trying to say is I think that we'd all say some sexual practices are wrong, whether it's pedophilia or bestiality. I think the Bible draws the line at a man and a woman faithfully committed in marriage, because sex is such a bonding experience that, it's a bit like glue, and it hurts when the relationship isn't there. And so that's why I think Christians want to say that sex belongs in marriage in a man and woman because that's how God's made it. And I know that it's unpopular, and I know that, it's a high bar. And the great thing about Jesus is he says, anyone who comes to me, I'll never turn them away, whether because we're all sexually broken in various ways. And he would love to hear from you. So, so I get it, but I still think Christianity is beautiful.
Excellent. Now, how have you evolved in your role? Or how has your faith evolved as well?
Yeah, good question, David. So I've only been doing this job for like 6 months, really, but I guess I've been kind of training and working towards it for years, so it's a bit random. But I reckon just as like a new Christian, I reckon I always kind of thought and had this vibe that God was kind of stingy and mean and didn't really like me. And that couldn't be further from the truth, David. The more I read the Bible and the more I get to know, so the Bible is God's word, the more I get to know him through it. I see just his generosity is lavish, and he loves you. Not only does he love you in like he's my father and I'm his child, and he cares for me and has my best interests at heart and will make hard calls or not do the things I want because he knows what's good for me. He also likes me. Like Jesus says, like, I'm not ashamed to call like his believers, his brothers and sisters. So it's like, oh look, there's Jacinta or JPat. She's my sister, and I sometimes think like that. And like, oh yeah, like even though I might think not that great or whatever, Jesus isn't ashamed of me. And so I think I've come to really believe that God is lovely. I think we all have this kind of inbuilt bias where we think God is bit of a jerk, but the Bible doesn't paint that picture of God, and so I think it's a text worth reading. Yeah.
What's your favourite verse, and why? And why?
Oof,
and why? Why does it resonate?
That is hard because there's so many. Favourite lately. Okay, okay, tough. Let's go with All right. Okay. You're going to test my memory too, so that's probably a good thing. All right, I'll just go with one that I roughly know. I kind of mentioned it earlier, but John 6:37 says, it's Jesus speaking, and he says, anyone who comes to me, I'll never cast them out. And at college, we learnt Greek, the original language that the New Testament was written in, and when that verse, we had to translate it, and Jesus uses the grammatical way to say, like the strongest way you can say no. So kind of we'd say something like, no way, Jose, or never will I ever. So Jesus is saying anyone who comes to me, no way ever will I cast them out. And so I just think that is such a beautiful picture of who he is. He'll accept anyone who comes to him. And so that verse helps me a lot when I think that I'm unacceptable. Yeah, it's great.
Now, I'm just going to pick another question about the Bible here.
Yeah.
Some people, I have read online and a few different things, that it could be recreated or rewritten.
Ooh, yeah.
To reflect, our society a bit better. But some people say, oh yeah, that could be done. Other people think it's sacrilegious. And how dare you touch it? Do you think perhaps, if there was a more modern update, but still holding those same values, that perhaps maybe you could bring more people into the church and more people into believers?
Good question.
Or do you or is that sacrifice?
Yeah. Well, I reckon there's probably, good question. I think I'm going to say no to updating the Bible. I think the Bible is a book written over 2,000 years, like you've got from Genesis to Revelation, 66 books, 40 different authors, and, some are written 700 years apart, and they all tell one story. It's kind of like a love story of the whole idea of, God, there's a girl and she's in a tower, but there's a dragon, and so she can't escape.
Game of Thrones.
There you go. And that's kind of like it all started in a garden, but it's ended up with this dragon, and the story then. But then Prince Charming comes along, and he goes to rescue the girl from the dragon, but then he realizes she actually loves the dragon, and that's kind of messed up. So the Prince Charming has to woo the girl and show her that the dragon's actually a dragon. That's kind of a funnish way to describe the story of the Bible. It's that we actually are captive by sin and Satan, and actually Jesus has to come and say, actually what you love is wrong and actually not good for you. Let me, he wins our hearts and shows us he's actually the good one. And so that's kind of a funnish way to think about it. But so I think you'd be taking away if you updated the Bible. I think lots of churches have, particularly in the past few hundred years. Probably the helpful way to explain it is where you get your authority. So I think you've probably figured out by now, I think the Bible is the highest authority. Yep. And other churches will say that liberalism or their reason is the highest authority. And so they're the churches who would like to probably update the Bible and make it more progressive and more socially acceptable. But I actually think liberalism dies out, this idea, because if you update the Bible, you take away, if you just relegate it to the culture at the time, or you say Jesus didn't really rise from the dead, or you throw out kind of any of the key principles that are outrageous and what we would say miraculous, like the things that really show God's goodness. If you start throwing them out because they're a bit weird, then you're not left with much. And then people don't go to churches like that. People leave churches like that. I think you see that in where the Bible's not taught, where it's viewed as not God's word or just a bit wild, or just maybe it's like a fun story with nice morals. Actually, people don't stick around. People die out. And so, those churches will have 20 older people in them. But actually, I think churches that try to hold to the Bible and have it as the highest authority in faith and conduct are actually growing. And so I think throwing it out would be foolish and wrong. But yeah, look, I'd be curious to see what they came up with if anyone tried to update it. That'd be intriguing. Get back to me, David.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not that I'm going to rewrite the Bible or anything.
Oof.
Yeah, no.
Big job, mate.
Yeah, I think so. I think critics will go hard at me.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Baying for blood.
So good.
Now, I do want to know, what drew you, or what attracts you most to the church you go to Bayside? What do you love the most?
Yeah, good question. What do I love the most? Oh, when you, a few things. One is it's only a church that's like 2.5 years old, which is just really fun because it's not steeped with lots of tradition and lots of this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
And so it means that you can try new things and be a bit flexible and think about like best practice of how we want to set things up from the start. And so I quite like that. And I think the guy, my boss, Paul, is the senior pastor there. And yeah, as I mentioned, he had a social work background, which I think means he's quite good at understanding people and caring for them. And so one of my favourite bits is just working with him. I think he's quite a bit of a unicorn, a bit of a rare find, and it's weird, but lots of Christian church like pastors and stuff are engineers, which I do love engineers. They're very logical, but sometimes it's task over people, and I can be a bit guilty of that too. But Paul is quite caring. He really cares about the people at our church and tries to support them, and that's looked like various things. Like in the past few months, and one of our new members has been diagnosed with cancer, and various other tricky situations in their family. And a family at our church also had a stillbirth recently of a 38-week-old baby, and that was really sad for our church family, and we really cared and grieved with them over the loss of that baby. And so I think it's great. Yeah, it's great having a community to look after and care for one another.
Now, with your current role, what is, on a day-to-day basis, what do you actually do?
Yeah, good question. I think lots of people at church want to know that question too, David. It's I remember it being mysterious what the pastor's got up to in the week. So I work 4 days because I'm still finishing off my masters at Bible College, and so still studying a bit part-time. Typical week, Sunday's church, and then in the afternoon you're kind of a bit tired, so you just kind of get all your admin done and plan the week and get back to people who have emailed and stuff. But a big part of my job each term is to prepare all the Bible studies. So we work through a book of the Bible pretty much each term, like kind of one book a term. So we've just finished Deuteronomy, which is the 5th book of the Old Testament. And so that's 34 chapters, and I've been working through trying to help the people in our church read the text and think about what it means and what that means for us today. So I've been working through breaking that down. So that probably takes me at least a day a week, because I haven't been translating the passage, but don't tell my lecturers at college, but
they won't listen to this.
Yeah, that's right. They'll be right. And so, so spending a fair bit of time in the Bible and praying for my own understanding and helping others understand it. We start the day, my boss and I, by praying together and for our church and people in need. And then I'll probably visit a few people. Like yesterday I got to visit a new girl and chat to her. She just had a baby. So, get to know her a bit more. I'm still getting to know people, I guess, because I'm new in the role. But so probably meet up with a few people, and we're starting a new Bible study. So I've been meeting with the leaders of that group to help them plan and prepare. And then I meet with the people who run our kids program, and I try to help them think about how we could keep doing things better and making space for new people to come. So, so because it's a church plan and it started with 25 people and now it's like 100 adults, that means it's growing. So it's kind of like when a business grows, you're always kind of upscaling stuff. So a bit of that a week. And then just like random jobs that you need to get done. Yeah, so I feel like it doesn't sound that much, but it's been quite intense. Yeah, good intense. I love it. It's literally the best job in the world, and I reckon I've got the best boss I'll ever have in my life. So it's all downhill from here, David.
Now, just a couple more questions. Yeah. How would you like to grow in that church?
Good question. Yeah, that's cool. Well, I reckon I would like to grow.
And how would you achieve that?
Oh, you're like my boss right now, David. And what's he trying to help me to do? He would say that he wants me to use my time effectively. So I reckon I love efficiency, but maybe less on the effectiveness side. So he's made me read a few good old David Allen's book on how to get things done, and probably So yeah, doing the right things, like it's easy, we all, you just want to do the fun jobs, David, like not the hard jobs.
No.
So yeah, I would say that I want to not be afraid of doing the hard job. That's the more important job, is like just a random kind of little personal project to work on. For the church, I reckon, my little hobby horse I like to take out for a gallop is like an AA meeting, right? Where people share pretty vulnerably about what they've done and what they're struggling with. I reckon churches should be more safe than AA meetings for people to share what they're struggling with, because we believe in grace, which is undeserved kindness from God. So less judgy and more understanding of and caring and loving of people, and compassion, because I think Jesus is full of compassion for people. And so I think, life is full of lots of hard things for many people. And so it's not surprising people do crazy things, to cope. And so I think I would love to see more and more people at our church open about what they're struggling with, because it's easy to look like you've all got it together, but ultimately we really don't. And so I reckon churches should be more vulnerable than AA meetings, and I'd love to see that. How am I going to do it? Well, I think vulnerability builds trust. So I think I have to be pretty open and honest about my life and what I'm struggling with, and creating a trustworthy space, like being trustworthy with information people share with me, and not passing that on, and valuing, because some things are really hard to say to others, and so really valuing that. Haven't quite figured it out, David, but I think it's important.
Now, you said earlier that your church is based at the bowling club.
Yeah, yep.
Now, some people might think, a church has to be held in a specific building, and that is a church where perhaps maybe it's what you're doing is possibly considered, some people might think is more of a community membership.
Right. Yeah.
We're just enjoying that love of God, but you're not really a church until you actually are in a house of God.
True. Yeah. Okay. That's yes, that is a thing people might think. Yeah, and it's a great question. It's very unorthodox to meet in a bowling club. It's kind of pros and cons. Like we don't love the seashell collection, but sometimes we open the bar after church, and that can be nice and cheap kick-ons. And so again, back to what does the Bible say a church is? It's actually not a building like church. The word church, well, funnily enough, right, it's been in the word, the Greek is ecclesia, and that just means a gathering of people. And so it's even used of a mob who are about to stone the apostle Paul, so the ecclesia that were gathered to stone Paul. So it's not always used in a positive sense, the word ecclesia, but basically it's just a gathering of people. And so Christians can gather wherever. North Korea, they gather in secret, or that's what the early church did too, just in people's homes before Christianity became socially acceptable in about 300 AD. And so I think it doesn't matter to us where we meet. We just need a building that's safe and accessible for people, and easy to come. If anyone wants, we're looking at buying or finding buildings, because we're maxing out the bowling club in terms of capacity. But there are churches in traditional buildings, and there are a few good ones around. But we are a newish independent church. We're a plant-offered church that's been around for about 15 years. Providence City, that's meets in like Subi, that's got about 600 people, and we're the third church plant in this network. And so, we haven't got a building yet, but we're hoping to find one that's a bit more suitable than a bowling club for kind of what we do. So, but it works for now, and we love it, and I think they don't mind having us there either. So,
Now, I do have another question for you.
Yep.
Now, there has been an article that I found in the West Australian, a little while ago while I was doing some research about Providence Church, and I did find a member of a Providence Church. I think it was somewhere in Subiaco. I could be wrong, but they were something to do with a cult, and they were accused of being perhaps, using cult-like behaviour within the church.
Yeah. That does ring a bell, David. That was a few years ago. I think it was like COVID times or whatever. So yeah, there was an article in the West. I didn't work for the Church Providence back then, but Providence Church, the senior pastor of. So yeah, just to remind listeners, I work at Providence Bayswater, and we're a church plant, so like a baby from the main church, Providence City. And the pastor there is a guy called Rory Shiner, and little shout out, he'll probably never listen to this, maybe I'll send it to him, that'll be funny. He got accused of being a cult leader, and by someone who didn't want the church to meet at Perth Modern, the school, because we just hire the venue on a Sunday. And yeah, I think from an outsider's perspective, you probably might think we're a cult. But again, you've got to define what a cult is. We're like I think they also called us ultra conservative. I feel like we're pretty mainline evangelical, like mainline Christians. Like I don't think within Christian circles, so speaking as an insider, we're pretty mainline. Mainstream is probably the word I'm looking for. So calling us like a conservative cult, we're definitely a bit conservative, but we're pretty mainline Christian,
Mainstream.
Yeah, mainstream. Thank you. Yes. And so Rory, the cult leader, that's funny. But no, I would say to be a cult, you've got to be exclusive, and we're very not exclusive. Like I met with a girl yesterday. She decided to become a member of our church. To leave, she just needs to say, I don't want to be a member anymore. I don't think that describes a cult. A cult, is like they're hard to leave. They've got an inspiring kind of leader who you have to kind of swear allegiance to. And look, Rory's a great guy, but I'm not in allegiance to him. We're in allegiance to Jesus. So you could call us the Jesus cult, I guess. And probably the other aspect of cults in mainstream Christian thought is they deny the essentials of the Christian faith. So for someone to be a Christian and me to go, oh yeah, we believe the same thing, they have to believe a few certain things about the Christian faith, maybe hold to something like the Apostles' Creed or Nicene Creed, one of the early church creeds where Christians go, yeah, this is what we agree. And mostly they're just defining who God is. God is Father, Son and Spirit, three in one, that kind of thing. If you deny any of those, then yeah, the Christian church would classify you as a cult. And I'm sure we can all think of a few classic cults that we know of. But if Providence Church is one, then wowzers. Then the whole Christian church is no longer a church, but let's go with cult. So anyway, it was a pretty good old and inflammatory article. And I guess maybe for us, what is it? Some publicity is better than no publicity. The cult's grown by 150 members this year, so, it's gaining spread, so watch out. Dun, dun, dun.
I wonder though, maybe with that article,
Yep.
I think it mentioned Perth Modern School.
Yeah.
And I think maybe, not that I'm going to try and give this any weight or anything,
Sure.
but maybe from their point of view, is they're thinking maybe, because it's not actually at a church, like I was saying before about Bayswater, at a bowling club, maybe that's where they were thinking, is they're doing it at different community centres rather than actual churches.
Yes.
I think maybe, I know it's a short straw to draw, but maybe that's where they were going with that.
True. Yeah, good point, David. That's really helpful. Thank you. Yeah, I can definitely see how people would be a bit sceptical of us because we're not connected to, we are an independent church and we're not probably going to stay that way for long. We would ideally like to be in a denomination, but at the moment we're not, and we're working on that. So yeah, I can see how people would be confused, but Providence was planted from St. Matthew's Anglican Church. So what I like about it is we've taken the best from the Anglicans, the best from the Baptists, well, arguably the best, and some great stuff from the Presbyterians, who, some minor disagreements or maybe some bigger ones between those denominations. And we kind of get to have, as Miley Cyrus would say, the best of both worlds. And so, yes, there's some pros to being independent, but yeah, occasionally people think you're a bit wacko. So,
well, that actually, now that you actually talked about that, actually gives me another interesting question.
Oh yeah.
Because a while back we talked about picking parts of the Bible, and you were kind of saying no, we're going to take it as a whole.
Yeah.
But just there, you said we picked some of the best of Anglican, some of the best over here.
Yeah. Yep.
Isn't that something? Shouldn't you just take that as a whole as well, rather than, because it's a little bit contradictory saying, oh yeah, we're going to pick a bit of this and this, to suit how we go about doing day-to-day, teachings of the Bible, but not, then not deciding to pick apart the Bible itself.
Yeah, no, great question, David. So I think into that you've got the Bible makes some things really clear about church, like it's one body who all work together for everyone's maturity and the care of those within it and outside it. But it also doesn't tell you a lot of other things, like should you have candles in your service, or should you have members who vote on decisions, or should one person decide? Like there's lots of kind of gaps that the Bible doesn't necessarily explain how churches should be. And so that's how lots of different church traditions have arisen in the Protestant faith, is we've kind of read the same Bible and gone, oh, well, maybe like the Presbyterians, the Presbyterian church came from Scotland, whereas Anglican from England, and then you've got kind of the Reformed churches on the continent, and particularly like the Dutch areas. So lots of these different denominations actually rose from different countries, reading the Bible and going, oh, well, we think we should set up a church where it's structured from the bottom up or the top down, or a few things like that. So I think we're not so much picking and choosing verses from the Bible. We're looking at kind of the gaps on what the Bible doesn't say about how a church should be structured. It gives kind of some basic principles, but it gives us the freedom to work out what that looks like. And so, what's an example? So maybe, let me give me a moment to think. Baptist churches, I've grown up in slightly more Baptist-y churches, and probably the distinctive of the Baptist churches is they won't baptise children, babies particularly, whereas Providence Bayswater, we don't think baptism is a big enough issue to divide over, so we will happily baptise adults, as the Baptists would, but also like the Anglicans and the Presbyterians, we'd baptise children. We have a dual practice, and so we don't think it's a big deal to divide over. So I kind of like that. We've taken the best of both those worlds, because for 2,000 years for 500 years people have divided over whether you should or shouldn't baptise children, and I think it's important, but it's not the most important issue. So let's just keep it in its rightful place. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Why can't you baptise children? I mean,
Yes. Okay. I did an assignment on this. You're testing my memory, which is awful. But okay, let's practice. Okay. Why can't you baptise children? I guess you've got to say what baptism is and why you're doing it. Baptist churches would hold. So baptism is basically. This is pulling some strings, but let's go with basic stuff. Okay. So it's. Baptism is a public acknowledgement of someone's, inclusion and commitment into the church and following Jesus. And kind of an Anglican background or Presbyterian would baptise children of believers. So if you've got two parents who are Christians, we would baptise that child, but on the basis of we're assuming that child will be brought up to know and love the Lord obviously it'll be their choice whether they do that all their life or not. But the parents are saying we're committed to doing this. And so in baptism they are, I guess, signing and sealing the promises of God to that child and saying you're loved and forgiven and given life eternal in Jesus. And so baptise the baby. The baby hasn't had a choice at that point. And so a kid who has been baptised as a kid might later on confirm that they are choosing to follow Jesus for themselves. Whereas like me, who grew up in a Baptist church, I was baptised when I decided to follow Jesus as a 18-year-old. And so, so the Baptist church is more see it as a individual kind of thing of you decide for yourself, whereas more different backgrounds like Anglican, Presbyterian and whatever else, they would say it's more of a family thing. And the Bible speaks about both. I don't think you can argue from the Bible totally, like from just the examples in, say, the book of Acts, like because it says the whole household were baptised. And does that include a child or not? We can't tell. And so, so it's not clear exactly. So we work from first principles there, and churches will come to different decisions on how they'll practice baptism, and that's okay.
Well, Jacinta, it's been an absolute pleasure having you today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely, David. It's been so fun. I've loved hearing the questions you've thought of. It's been a great time. Thank you.
Thank you.
No worries.